Mr. Sahota. Good morning.
Shah, how are you?
How I'm good. I'm on day three at this new little co-working space in Manchester, where I'm
That's
basing
now.
myself at the moment, which is good fun. Um, but I was thinking, so since we've published our last article, we had quite some lovely feedback, which was nice, but quite a few people were asking about personal brand and
Okay,
asking us to cover that topic.
okay.
And I know brand's something which is really important for you. So I thought, so what does it mean to you? So if I said personal brand, and if I look at kind of your personal brand, what do you think that means?
So to me, personal brand is the, how do I phrase this now? Personal brand is the version of you that you put out into the world. And there was a Gary Vee video that I sent to you a couple of days ago now, and he was talking about this
Yeah,
17 years ago, and he was talking about how putting your authentic self out into the world is going to be critical if you want to be a business owner, an entrepreneur, someone of influence in the future. And it's so true. So to me, personal brand is talking about you and who you are as a person, as authentically and as transparently as you possibly can out into the world using social media. Now, why is that important and why is that critical? Let me put that back to you. Why do you think that's important? Why do you think it's critical?
so I'm gonna do my usual thing of getting a bit philosophical now,
Go on.
and because for the longest time, all of our interactions were face to face. So let's go back a couple of hundred years, not
Yeah,
that long ago. Um, most of our interactions were literally in our small village where you'd know the 15 people around you,
yeah,
you'd knew who they were, what they stood for, you'd know their background, you'd know whether to trust them or not. And then all of a sudden industrialization came along, the world became a lot smaller, and instead of getting to know 50 people in our lifetime, we now know thousands. And and when you meet someone, you need to kind of really quickly figure out who they are. Should
mhm,
I trust them? What's their game? Why are they around me? And there's also the other additional complication now of these very artificial scenarios that we're in, because again, going back 100 years, we might meet at the pub or at a dinner or at some social function. But now we've got these horrible, awkward things like networking events, we've got social media, we've got
yeah,
LinkedIn. And so all of a sudden, you or I or anyone else have to signal really quickly in a way that allows the audience to know who are we and what are
yeah.
we about and what's valuable about me that you need to know to facilitate some kind of interaction or discussion, right? So, so if we take it out of business land, look at thank God both of us have been married for quite a long time, and not to each other though. Some people have made that assumption. Um, so we don't have to use dating sites now. But my
Right.
friends who are on dating sites, you read the bios, it's just pure signaling. It's the standard thing. There's the photo one, looking at your best. Photo two, somewhere on holiday, showing that you're well traveled. Photo three, probably with some friends, showing that you have a social life. Photo four, maybe kissing a pet, showing you have a softer side. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
signaling, and it's the same on LinkedIn, same everywhere else. So, to me, my view is that personal brand is almost a short form for all the different types of signaling that we have to do so that people get to know who we are really, really quickly.
So if I'm understanding correctly what you're saying, and it is resonating and making a lot of sense. I really love the analogy of being in a village or being in a tribe because ultimately, as humans, we're tribal creatures. We want to belong, and being shunned from the tribe was like the worst thing that could ever happen.
Exactly.
Watching Vikings and being kicked out of the tribe or leaving the tribe, then you may as well be dead. And so yeah, you're right. Now we're connected to the world, which is a fantastic thing, a huge opportunity that comes from that. But then how do you transmit your trustworthiness and who you are as a person instantly?
Yeah.
Whereas back in the days in a village, like you said, everyone knew who you were. That's that's Vikas, the
Yeah.
coffee lover. Ah, okay, I'm going to go to him for coffee.
Yeah. So
That. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. So
That,
if we
that
go
that's
to sorry to interrupt, if we go to traditional brand theory, right? So traditional brand theory, which a lot of our audience will have probably read about at some point, talks about two things: points of parity and points of difference, right? So you're in the food game. So if we talk about points of parity, those are the things that have to be on your product that show you deserve to be in that market. So it's what's expected of your brand as a baseline. That means, yes, I deserve to be here. So oftentimes it could be, so for example, I've got a bottle of water here. So for those of you just listening, I've got a bottle of sparkling water with me. And on the bottle, there's, a nice logo, there's the usual nutritional information, a bit of stuff about the brand. There's almost these points of parity that you kind of have to do. The points of difference then are what's unique about my product over and above the fact that I deserve to be in that market. And so if we think about personal brand, the points of parity are almost, well, it might be the brand that you wear. It might be, are you in a suit? It might be, oh, I have an Apple Watch. There's all these things which are almost a license to operate in that
yeah,
group. Um,
yeah.
and then on top of that, it's then the points of difference. So a really simple example: every time we go to a networking event, we'll make an active decision about what do I wear. And there's certain events where oh, I kind of need to dress smart. So everyone dresses smart. But then, so that's your point of parity. Everyone's in a suit or a nice dress or whatever. But then some people might come in with a really great big diamond watch as their point of difference to signal maybe I'm more successful or wealthy. So
Right.
that's the traditional kind of brand theory, which then maybe links then to personal brand.
So, okay, if we then take the village concept of building trust,
Mm-hmm.
points of parity, standing out, and now, we have AI, multiple social media platforms, whether it's text-based, video-based, combi-based platforms that you can put yourself out there into the world. Um, how do you go about establishing your own personal brand? Because I think also part of it is that you really have to know yourself. You have to know that, like, okay, I like fitness, I like
Yeah.
food, I like business, I like Lego, I like
Yes.
dinosaurs, I like learning. And
Yes.
that's a lot of stuff to communicate about who you are in order to build trust. So how do you then go about starting that journey? Because, truthfully speaking, for me at least, I'd like to think that I'm at the beginning
Mm.
of that journey. Okay, look, I've done stuff with Mr. Sings. I've done stuff with my other business. I've done stuff with coaching and had press exposure, TV exposure, which is fine and well, but I've never actually captured it and turned it into a like quote unquote personal brand. And that's the journey that I'm on now. I
Yeah.
do want to do that because I understand the importance of it, not only on myself, but on my businesses and everything that I want to achieve in the future.
Mm.
So how do you go about collating all of that and starting that journey and communicating it in a way that's authentically you?
So if I reflect on your personal brand, I think you do that really well because you anchor it around the most fundamental thing, which is doing the work, actually delivering something, right?
Right, right, right,
The the challenge right now is there's lots of people who've never built anything, they've never done anything, they are still super early on their journey,
right.
and they try and create and curate a personal brand which doesn't actually then exist. So let me give you an example. In our the last piece that we published around personal brand, we gave our readers a little model, right? And in that model, there was 6 domains, and I'm going to break each of these down for you. So we're going to use you as our very handsome guinea pig. So,
Yeah, haircut as well. So
I mean, to be
I'm ready.
fair, I was going to say looking pretty fresh. Um, so domain one, actual work. This is the critical one. So if I look at your brand, your personal brand, you've built business. You've actually done it. Been there. There's, you actually built stuff, right? So you've crossed that hurdle. The second one is the facts and the history, and this is a really good one because you could tell me, "Hey Vic, I've built a business,"
Yeah,
but you've got to be able to evidence that. And actually, there's enough evidence out there that you've built a business,
yeah,
that there's a history of you being an operator. So
yeah,
great, we've now crossed hurdle two. Hurdle three.
Title of that one, Hurdle 3, the title of that one.
So hurdle one is the actual work, actually
Doing
doing
the work.
stuff.
Yeah.
Hurdle two is that can you fact check it? You know, is it real? Hurdle three is messaging and platform, right? So there's no point building a personal brand in fashion, let's say, and not being on any platforms where people in fashion hang out. Like no one's
Right,
going to
right,
see
right.
you. What you've done really well is over the years adapted where you're messaging. So, so now you're very active on Instagram where lots of entrepreneurs are hanging out now.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know, so you've chosen the right platform, and actually your messaging is really smart because you're posting reflections and the good and the bad, and so you're again giving more evidence. So that's messaging. Number four is authenticity. This is what you talked about right at the beginning,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like you're not trying to sit there and say, "Hey, I'm this perfect, amazing person that knows everything." You know, you're doing the right thing, which is just saying, "Hey, this is me. I love Lego. I love dinosaurs. I go running. I sometimes find stuff hard. I love doing this. This is the kind of you're just being you, which is great because that's your human connection."
Right.
Um, Number five is peers and independence. This is often the hard bit because so let's say we've done all of this, right? If other peers in your industry disbelieve you, or if you've got independents who don't need to be nice to you, who disbelieve you, everything else is broken, right? Because that tells you something's wrong. Whereas again, for you, you've been on the BBC. There's loads of other entrepreneurs who've said great things about you. You've had loads of really positive press feedback. So again, so we've now crossed the five major hurdles. And then there's the sixth hurdle, which is slightly less controllable, which is the court of public opinion. It's quite
Nice.
it's quite possible that you've done really well in all five hurdles, but people just don't like you, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's hurdle six. But again, you put a lot of good energy into the world, and in general, you get a lot of good energy back.
Mm.
So if you think about it, even maybe without actively using a framework, you do all of that in how you build and curate and communicate your personal brand.
Mm. What and who, in your opinion, who do you think is really great at personal brand right now?
Wow, that's a great one. I tell you what, I'm going to think on this for a minute. Have you got somebody in mind?
Well, I mean, there was a point that I wanted to bring up when you talked about the first anchor, if we call it that, which is do the work. So
Mm,
there's a video that I watched by Alex Hormozy.
yes.
He talks about how out in internet land, people talk about morning routines, and you do your morning meditation, your cold bath, your
Yeah.
journaling, your meditate. You're like 4 hours in, and his approach is kind of cold. It's interesting, and I like it. And he just says, "Do the work," because
Mm,
by doing the work, it gives you the evidence that you can do the work, which in turn gives you the confidence that you
yeah.
need to continue doing the work and prove to yourself that when you're using your affirmations in the mirror, that hey, I am
Yeah.
X. You've got the proof to start backing that up, and yeah, I think it's a really interesting start point when you start with the actual work. Start with the
Mm,
stuff that you are actually doing. And I also believe that it's important, at least for me. I can't speak for anyone else, but I think it's really important to be as honest as you can.
yeah.
And if you're starting from zero to try and build a personal brand, and we'll get on to how this links to a business in a minute, if that's okay with you. But if you're starting from zero trying to build a personal brand, I feel like it's okay to say, like, hey, this is my day one. I want to be, I want
Completely
to be an
agree.
expert. I want to be an expert on happiness.
Yeah.
And my day one building my personal brand. So
Yeah.
by the way, I'm going to be reading this book and
So
I'll be sharing with you what I've learned.
completely agree. I mean, the amount of times I've been to an event and met somebody who hands me a business card and the job title
Right,
is CEO, and I'm like, oh, great, how many people on your team? Oh, it's just you. So you're the CEO of
right,
you.
right,
Like,
right, right.
I would respect it much more if someone said, hey, look, you know what? I'm just starting out, figuring it out on the journey. Great to meet you.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that to me, I completely agree. I think Alex Hormozy is a really good example. I actually think I'm going to go with a bit of a rogue one. Um, So I went to visit Brompton, the bike company, and Will, who's the chief exec of Brompton, I think he does it really well
Okay, okay,
because he's turned around and built this extraordinary business with Brompton folding bikes. you know, the facts back it up. He's always super truthful about the difficulties, the good stuff, the bad stuff. He loves his brand. People say great things about him. He's just him. Like when you meet him and it's the same person. I think
yeah,
I think he's done it really well because again, it's anchored around he's actually doing it, living it, and breathing it every day,
yeah.
and he's him online. I think it's phenomenal.
So I feel like when you are on this journey of building a personal brand, you need to know why you're doing it, right?
Yeah,
And for me, I really like what you said earlier on about the village concept and building trust and its currency really with billions of strangers in the world that are going to see you
yeah,
on the internet, right? So it's building that trust currency with strangers
mm,
and in fact even with people that you know. You know, when you do something new and you put it out there into the world, you're putting another deposit into the trust bank and
completely.
the replication bank of the people that you know as well. And I feel like when you've got that and you've then got a business,
Mhm.
it becomes almost easier to promote via your personal brand, your business. Um,
Yeah,
because ultimately a business and building a brand for a business is a completely different journey because you're building a brand voice,
yeah,
building a tone, you're trying to communicate
yeah,
as trying to turn something that's not a human into a human with a brand. Whereas with your own personal brand, like you said, you could be human, you can be you,
yeah,
and you can say, hey, by the way, this is my business. This is what we do. I've got a chili crisps brand with my family, and we take the piss out of each other as
yeah,
brothers, and we make my dad do really funny things. And by the way, we make delicious chili
yeah.
crisps. And then you
They
go on to
really
the
are. They really actually are, to be fair, as well.
I have to send you some more actually. I know this applies
Yeah.
alone. So I'll get them
The
out.
but and this is the thing, and I think too many people make the mistake of trying to say stuff because they feel they have to, right? So there's plenty of entrepreneurs I know who have hired social media consultants to curate and run their Instagram and LinkedIn and things like this. And here's the rub, right? Anyone can read that profile, read their post and go, ah, that wasn't you. Like it's so obvious. Like even if you hire a really, really, really good social media person, it's
Yeah,
so blatantly obvious when it was written by someone else. And it breaks the trust and it breaks the authenticity immediately. Like you don't have to post constantly. You don't have to post every day. You don't have to post seven
yeah,
times a day. You just need to post when it's right and important to do so because that's when you have something to say.
yeah.
And and for you as a business owner, you've got to realize that your power is what gets you a seat at the table, right?
Mm, mm,
So if people know you, if you're interesting, if you have some pedigree, if
mm,
you're, if somebody could be becoming curious about you, then they're going to take a meeting. Like,
mm, mm.
for example, I mean, how was that for you? After you did that BBC show, High Street Dreams,
Yeah.
was it easier for you to get meetings after that?
Oh, like the doors are just so easy to open after that because
Exactly.
you've been like verified by others, right? You've been on TV, they know your story, they know the journey that you've been on, and you know someone else has gone through the
Mm.
effort of filming you with an entire crew for 3 months, editing and putting that work together, putting it out there into the world, and so all of a sudden your level of verification and
Yeah.
trust has gone up by virtue of that,
Yeah.
and I feel like if I go back to Alex Hormozy as the kind of muse
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
part of the conversation, I think he's a really good guy to use because you know he's built up his personal brand ultimately to drive business into acquisition.com, which is his
Yeah.
main that's his business, right? And apparently hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And their model is simple. Acquisitions.com, they acquire other businesses. You know, they get you to 3 million. Well, they give you everything that you need for free to get to 3 million. When you're at 3 million, they will then invest into the business, take a stake, strategically take you to
Yeah.
10 and 100, whatever. And however, in order to for that business to work, Hormozy's built up his own personal brand
Yeah.
And for example, like when he launched his second book, I signed up for it because I wanted to see his machine at work.
Yes.
How did he go about doing this? Because his first book, which is I think $100 million leads, no, $100 million hook. I can't remember the name of the title, but his first book was fantastic. I've got the book, and incredible content,
Yeah.
really useful, practical stuff. But he then wanted to launch his second book, and
Yeah.
the way that he did it was phenomenal. Did it through his personal brand. He got people to sign up. He
Yeah.
got people to be advocates. There were challenges within the email campaigns that went out. So who's doing the most
Yeah.
promotion? How many referrals are you getting to join the live event
Yeah.
when I released the book? And then he did this like global live event as Alex Hormozy to release his book. The book obviously went shot straight to number one and stayed there for ages on Amazon and everywhere else. And I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands, millions of copies he sold, but he sold a shit ton of those
Yeah.
books off of the back of his personal brand. And actually just reminds me of another guy, Simon Squibb, who's doing incredible work
Yes.
on personal brand right now.
Absolutely.
Like, his whole thing is, what's your dream? And it's essentially the same model. He's built his personal profile up over the last couple of years to what, 10 million followers
Yeah.
from zero. Um, Consistency, personal brand, authenticity.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go on any platform, the voice is the same, the tone is the same, the message is the same, and the question is the same. What is your dream? And he used the same model to release the book that he's got, and it's all of his knowledge of making
Yeah.
your one big dream come true in a book, but it's via his personal brand that he's able to sell, an insane amount of books, get
Yeah.
straight to number one, and stay there for ages because he's put the effort into building his own personal brand. I do want to caveat this though by going back to your earlier 6 points, which I think are very relevant. He's done the work. He's built a
Exactly.
business, sold it for multi millions. The social proof is there. He sold to I think PwC, so he's verified. All of these things have
Yeah.
been done already. For him to then start again from zero
Yeah.
as a personal brand on socials to then go on to do his next thing, which I think is Help Bank, right? That I think it's like £100 million business
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
Is incredible.
And I think, and this is the thing because, Alex, Simon, these people have been there, done it. Like there's no arguing that they have, got that actual work and they've delivered. And so actually, they can become really powerful because one of the things that people don't often talk about with personal brand is that the more you choose to build a personal brand, the more you're exposing yourself, right? Because the more you put out there, the more questions people have, the more people look into your life, the more the more that you've got to be really careful as well. Let's be
Mm.
honest. Um, because actually the privilege of having a personal brand comes with the additional responsibility of your own life. And the reason I mention that is, every time you go and do a talk, every time you're in front of an audience, every time you put an article out there, every time you appear on somebody's podcast, there will always be people out there that are like, who is this dickhead? And do their
Yeah,
research, right?
yeah, yeah,
Now,
yeah.
let's take someone like Mr. Wonderful, who's Kevin on Shark Tank in the USA.
Right.
Yeah. So he calls himself Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary. Um, he's he's probably the spikiest shark on Shark Tank in the USA. And so you could quite conceive somebody watching an interview with him and then going, who is this guy? God, I don't like him. But then they do their research and they're like, okay, he's kind of serious. Like, he's
Yeah.
built huge businesses. But then let's imagine a hypothetical dragon. Let's imagine a hypothetical dragon who he just pops out of nowhere and says, you know what? I'm happy. I'm sexy. I'm a millionaire. Every time they do something, there will be people who are like, I wonder what the story really is.
Yeah.
And in that sense, if you are literally going to try and blag it like that, then you have to try and create enough escape velocity where your personal brand is so big that the facts don't matter anymore.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So in the case of our purely hypothetical entrepreneur who asserts to be happy,
Wait,
sexy,
I think we could say the name. I think we could say the name. Like
Bevan Startlet. So
Bevan Butler.
let,
Yeah.
let's 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 assume that Bevan Startlet asserts to be a happy and sexy millionaire, and then let's assume that the facts don't correlate with his assertion. The point is, if you're running fast enough away from the facts, your personal brand could be sufficiently big where the facts don't matter anymore. That's extraordinarily rare that that happens, but it does happen quite,
Yeah.
on a number
Yeah.
of occasions. Um, so my worry is a lot of people model Beav and Startlets, um, approaching ideas when actually it just doesn't work. Like most people just get caught out. He's just very
Well,
lucky that it hasn't been.
yeah, and I think this is one of the one of the aspects of human nature that is so interesting, that there's so many different ways to approach this, that you know one person will do it one way, one person will do it another way, but it just goes to show that even doing it that way, where basically you tell
Hmm.
a massive porky pie and then you just work hard at getting away from that massive porky pie, it still works.
Exactly.
But what it did make me think of, when we were talking about, let's say, Simon Squibb and Hormozy and Kevin O'Leary and all these guys have done massive, massive, massive things. I feel like one of the fears and the hesitations that I had about starting doing even this conversation,
Yeah.
starting Nine Nugs, starting the journey of building a personal brand, because I feel like I'm at the beginning of that journey. One of the biggest fears that I had was imposter syndrome and
Yeah.
thinking, I feel like I haven't achieved anything. I feel like I haven't done anything significant enough, meaningful enough to warrant putting my personal brand and my name out there to say, like, hey, like, this is what I do, these are my businesses, and this is what
Mm.
I'm all about. Now, I appreciate that's a lot of there's maybe mental trash that I need to
Hmm.
deal with and work on. And I wonder how much of that impacts, you know, you and others from actually even just getting started in the
Do
first
you know
place.
what? I hope you never lose that because I
Go on,
think
go on.
I think that's a really important part of staying humble, right? And I think people resonate with you more if you're showing some humility. Some of the most successful people I have ever met in my life still have imposter syndrome. And because you might have sold your business for 2 billion and you go to the country club and that guy's sold it for 30 billion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
True.
the point is imposter syndrome is everywhere. I think the minute you believe your own hype, you've already lost. I think if you were sat there going, you know what, I'm great, I've done this, I've built this, I think then you've lost your authenticity completely because you just believe your own hype. I think the more you stay humble, be proud of where you've made your successes, but stay humble enough to know I'm always learning.
So, okay, you've made me think of two really important points. In terms of being proud of the successes and celebrating the wins, I was at a talk last night with a guy called Nick Bassi,
Mm,
who owns Child's Play Clothing, which is the biggest high-end luxury children's fashion retailer in the world, exclusive
wow.
partnerships with Gucci, Chanel, Ralph, like the biggest names in the world. Clients like DJ Khaled, Cristiano Ronaldo,
Sick.
Lionel Messi, McGregor, on speed dial on the phone. And Nick's a local guy from East London, who's built this business up from with his family, actually, family business. And he was being pressed on these questions. He's got a Le Ferrari. There's only a handful of these cars in the world. It's a $2 million
Beautiful.
car. He sent it back to Ferrari to be painted pearl white, I think it was. That's like his only indulgence. And he was pressed on this same question. Are you proud of yourself? Are you proud of what you've achieved? And he just retreated. He's like, look,
Yeah.
no, I, I, I find it difficult to say those things about myself. I always tell my kids, this is Nick speaking. I tell my kids I'm proud of them and I love
Yeah.
them. And he was like, you know what? Actually, I think it comes from my own dad not telling me. And so I find it hard to tell myself that I'm proud of myself and that I've achieved something good
Yeah.
and give myself a pat on the back. And interestingly, reflecting on what he was saying, I feel exactly the same. I feel extremely uncomfortable saying those things about myself. I feel extremely uncomfortable
You should do.
when other people tell me.
Yeah.
I kind of like get that same, like, oh, that feels awkward. And
Yeah.
maybe I try and reflect it, but I then try and look at the other person and actually maybe I do reflect it. This is therapy right here. But he was even talking about having this. I suppose, imposter syndrome of,
Mm.
look, I haven't achieved anything yet. There's so much more that I still want to do. And it's just really interesting you raised that point. And then the second one, um, is you. I mean, was it this year, towards the end of last year, you exited your business, and it's something that you've been working on for an insanely long amount of time. And I remember the WhatsApp conversation that you and I had when the money finally landed in the bank, and I was like, and the messages that we were having us and you, I think I said the same thing to you, like, look, we have to have some context here because you were actually you were happy with it, but you were feeling a certain type of way about the exit, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it doesn't matter who we are. Everyone has scorecards, and in business,
Right,
the amount of money that lands in your bank becomes a bit of a scorecard for
right,
yourself.
right,
You know,
right.
um, and so I could sell my business for an eight-figure sum, and there's someone next to me who sold it for a nine-figure sum, and then there's someone next to them who sold it for a ten-figure sum,
Yeah.
and so there's always that angle. I think one of the really subtle things is you can be proud of who you are
Mm.
without necessarily feeling arrogant about what you've done. Like,
Oh, that's nice. I'm gonna
like,
write that down
like
actually.
I'm proud of who I am as a person, right? I am happy and proud with who I am as a person. But as for what I've done, until the last day of the last chapter of my story, I don't know what the answer to that question is. But that's okay because as long as on a day-to-day basis, I'm I'm doing things which align with me being proud of who I am and my values, then the rest of it will figure itself out.
So I've just written that down. So feel proud of who I am without being arrogant about my achievements. I love that. That's amazing.
Like I give you an example, like the minute you believe the hype, I
Mm.
think you just I think you become really disconnected from the world and it's just awful. Like one of my friends, for example, she's for a non-profit organizing a small panel event for
Okay.
International Women's Day, which is coming up. Anyway, so she'd reached out to lots of high profile people in the city, and one person responded with, thank you for this invitation. However, um, you know, if I'm being invited to an event like this, normally I'm on a panel or speaking, not just receiving an invite. And I was like, and my friend sent this to me, and I was like,
It's a
that's
bit
a
weird.
that's a bit of a dick thing to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so my friend pushed it a bit and went, okay, well, we'd love to have you on a panel if you'd be so inclined. And she went, yes, well, I don't do anything for free. And I was like, okay, I get that people don't do things for free, but you've got to understand the context, right? Like, if a small local charity in your city asks you to do something, it's very different to say to Goldman Sachs saying, "Hey, do you want to come and speak on a panel at the Goldman Sachs Team Away Day?" Of course, you're not going to do it for free. You're the only
Yeah,
person
yeah,
in the room
absolutely.
who's not a millionaire, right? But if you start saying stuff like that, that's when the bluff gets caught out. Like if you have to protest so hard on your social media that you're a someone, chances are you're a no one.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And you know what I think is quite interesting, and this is like the part where I'm 100%. I don't even think I'm a student yet. I'm like trying to do my exams to get into the school of like understanding how to really master the use of social media to get out there into the world and to connect with the world. And I feel like this is where the people who get it, not necessarily just an age related thing, but the people that really get how to use socials to go viral, to tap into the things that connect with other people and how to really use the platform.
Mm.
I feel like that's where they can, even if they haven't achieved anything and they're having to protest that they are someone, if they've also then got the skill to put it out there into the world, they will at least I suppose for the short term get some success from just by bluffing it as well because they just know how to use the tool to get
Mm.
out to enough people
Yeah, but
to
then
get
it's
back to
but
back.
but you've also got to curate it and be honest, right? Like I'll give you
Yeah.
an example. Like you know, I've done a TEDx. I did TEDx in Manchester. There's hundreds of thousands of TEDx events around the world. Like doing a TEDx ain't that special. And
I thought it was special.
no, I
I,
enjoyed it and I'm proud of it, right? And the Manchester one had like a couple of thousand people there. But I've also been to TEDx events where there's 50 people there. And then some of the TEDx events in the US and some of the ones in India have tens of thousands of people there, right? So you'll often see people on LinkedIn that go, I'm a TEDx speaker and I've won this
right,
award and I've
right,
won that
right, right,
award.
right, right.
And that's fine. Like if you did TEDx San Francisco or something where there was 15,000 people, great, right? And if you've won like really, really high quality awards,
Yeah,
great. But you've got to curate it a bit. Like if you won some local award that no one gives a shit about, like fine, be proud of yourself, but curate what you're putting out there. Like who
right.
cares? Or if you did like a TEDx with like 50 people there, be proud of doing it, but you've got to keep everything in context. Like,
So like be honest about the fact that
like
I did a talk and there were nine people in the room and share that
yeah,
as part
like for
of the
example, if it was if that was the case, and let's say I did a talk and there was like 20 people there, I'd be like, you know what? I did a TEDx event. There was 20 people there. It was still kind of nerve-wracking, but it was beautiful being in a smaller audience, could really connect to everyone. Just be honest about it, right? It's like no one cares. Is I think one of the other things about personal brand is there's a general assumption that everything you post has significance and audience when it really doesn't. Like in general, no one cares. No one cares. Everyone's
right.
busy in their own lives, doing their own thing. Um, all you're doing is making sure that you're in their memory. So, for example, you post enough where if I was a journalist and if I was following you and if I was a journalist, there's a good chance that if I'm doing an article about entrepreneurs, I'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, I should reach out to Kuldip because you post just enough to be in my memory. Chances are I probably would never listen to any of your posts, but you
Yeah, yeah,
post enough where I'm that where you're there. So,
yeah.
so this is what I mean. Like curating it is really important. Now, Mr. Sahota, I'm conscious that we are coming up to 50 minutes and we need to give our 9 most important nuggets for our audience. Now, with personal brand as well, for the listeners and the readers and the viewers, and maybe the people connecting telepathically, however you're choosing to engage with us, um, we are going to do a few pieces on personal brand because this is such a big topic. It's so big for entrepreneurs. We're going to do a few pieces. So this isn't it. We're going
For
to do
me as
more.
well, I think I wasn't expecting to get this out of it. So definitely for me as well,
Mm.
we're going to be talking about this again for sure. And you're right. Look, let's get into the nugs, the nine nugs from this. So look, I'm going to share what I've written down, and maybe that can become part of the nugs. So personal brand, first nugget is imagine, oh, how do we phrase this? I want to bring the tribe, the village life tribe concept into this. The first nug of personal brand. If you were in a village, what would the other villagers say about you?
Mm.
What would other villagers say about you?
Yeah.
That's the first nug. How do you feel about that?
I like that. I'm writing these down as well. Unlike any other podcast, um, we're making notes in real time with pens and paper. So I love that. What would the village say about you? That's a really good
The village
thought.
say about you.
I think number two, I think, is humility, right? Like everyone's on a journey, everyone's at different points on the journey. You've got to be humble about what you've done, where you are. You can't, don't try and project too far ahead. Just
Yeah,
be humble about where you are and where you're going and what your
yeah,
ambitions are. So humility is number two.
I love that. So one of from the anchors that we talked about, I particularly love the first one around doing the work. Um, and so yeah, that's going to be for me the third one, do the work.
Yeah. I think that one's such an important one because also, you've got to realize what you're doing it for, right? Like you're building a business and And so when you're curating the stuff you say yes to, you've got to make sure that it is the kind of thing that's going to help with that journey to get and do the work. There's no substitute for actually, delivering. There's plenty. Like if you look on a really good experiment for our audience, go onto the Sunday Times rich list, go down that rich list, and just tick off people that you've heard of. It'll be a tiny, 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 tiny number, right?
Mm.
But there'll be of the top 100 people, there's probably 95 people on there who are all richer than God, but we have no idea who they are.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
could
yeah.
walk past you in the street. So the reason to mention that is doing the work's the important bit, right? You can and you can achieve a hell of a lot without spending an overt amount of time on your personal brand.
It gives you a story to tell, right?
Yeah,
And you know what?
exactly.
Actually, that point that you've just made, and when you was talking, it gave me a thought for the fourth nug,
Go on.
which is know. I think it's important to know why you're doing this. Know your
Yes.
why. Know your why.
Yeah, I like that. Know exactly why. Yeah, I love that. I think number five is the channel, right? If you know why you're doing it, then you will know who your audience are. And so you'll know the channel that you spend your time and energy on, because there's a
Okay.
lot. So, for
Yes.
example, for me personally, you know, my objective with personal brand now is obviously, since we sold all the businesses and all that, I'm looking at doing board roles and advisory roles and things like that and bits of consulting. And
The stripping career. Don't forget about the stripping career now.
yeah,
The
yeah,
new thing.
yeah. To be honest, like that's going fine. Like I don't really need to do much with that. But the all of that audience is mainly LinkedIn. So rather
Right.
than expending
Oh,
my time
for the stripping works, it's the LinkedIn.
exactly, so rather than expending all my time on, let's say, Insta and other platforms, I focus on there. So know your channel. So know why. Number four and number five, know where your audience hang out. So you know what channel to curate your content. So that's number five.
What, know your audience. So number four, know your why. Number five, know your
Is
audience.
no, number four is know your why, and number five is choose your channel, right?
Okay. Okay.
Because that's where your audience hang out. So it was a number six, Mr. Sahota.
Choose your channel. I love that. Okay. So number six for me, personal brand. Um, let's see. I feel, how do I like authenticity. I do like
Mm,
authenticity, but I think the mini therapy session that we had has made me,
that was powerful.
yeah, thank you. I shed a tear. Has made me think about my own imposter syndrome. And maybe we should talk about, maybe the sixth nut can be embracing the imposter or embrace
Yes,
the imposter.
I love that. Embrace it's true. I think to go along with that, number seven, I'm gonna say embrace you, right? Like don't try and pretend like we've both known each other a long time. We
Mm.
both know that we're both a bit odd, like I'm obsessed with cats and planes and all sorts of weird, just fine. Like there's very few meetings people have with me where I don't mention my cats at some point. And I'll give you an example. So I'm sat in this co-work space and look what's on my desk. So for those of you who
Listen, by
are
the way, we have to have the cats on
Oh,
one of the.
totally. So for those of you who are only listening or reading, because I miss my cat when I'm not at home, my wife got me a little tiny version of my cat, which I call Travel Sam, who's a little pocket version of Samosa who's at home. So this is what I mean. Just embrace you. Like you're you. Just style it out. So that's number
And
seven.
how can we maybe rephrase that to celebrate the weird? Is that the right way to describe it?
Well, celebrate you. So all
Okay.
the different things that make you you. It could be weird. It could be it's
Well,
cool.
I mean, you know what it is, because I feel like
We all have
the,
a bit of weird.
these nuances, these weirds, the weirds, if we call it that, that is actually what makes you interesting. We call it the inner geek. There's different ways that people describe it, but I think
Yeah,
actually talking about that, celebrating that, and embracing that is actually what's going to make you
yeah.
that bit more interesting. So how can
The
we? I
I
don't
think
know.
yeah, I think look, don't I think don't be scared of having a conversation at a boardroom table sometimes that you maybe normally would have with friends. Obviously with certain caveats.
Yeah.
But I've been in super high-powered board meetings where I've talked about my cat or I've talked about others. It's fine. Like it shows you humanity and it shows you as
Yeah.
you. It's really important. If, however, your weirdness is something that you would normally only disclose on Channel 4's embarrassing bodies, maybe leave that out of the boardroom, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a number eight then. What are we gonna
So
have
what
for
have you
number
written for
eight?
number seven? What have you
So
written for number seven? Embrace you.
celebrate your weirdness. I like that.
Celebrate the weirdness. Okay. Yeah. Celebrate the weirdness. Very cool. Okay, number eight. So let's have a look. Feel proud of who I am without being arrogant about my achievements. So this has made me think about blockages, limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
mind crash, and any other fears, I suppose.
Hmm.
No, so how about knowing your fears? Know your
That's
fears.
that's really powerful. Because, for example, like I've done networking and public speaking and stuff for years and years and years and years and years. I still get really scared about public speaking and I still feel really uncomfortable networking. But that's fine, by the way, because I've got to do it. It's part of the job. But
Yeah,
at least I know I'm scared of it, and that's okay. Like I'm not going to pretend.
yeah, yeah. And actually, just talking this out with you, what has been one of my fears around putting content out and building the personal brand, it actually has been around wanting it to look and feel a certain type of way, and actually
Mm,
now starting to embrace it's all right for it to be a bit rough and good is better than perfect.
mm.
Um,
That's
and
so true.
actually, yeah, so I just realizing now that that kind of held me back. And
Yeah,
the first post of our conversation that I did was literally a raw, raw edited version of our conversation. I've just put it out there, and I'm
yeah.
glad it's a start point, right?
Well, and that takes me, I think, to a good number nine, which is there's no such thing as complete, right? Because
Mm,
it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you are on the journey, you're on the journey. Like you've been in business for like 20 years. I've been in business for like 20 plus years. Still on the journey. Our
mm,
personal brands are always changing and evolving with what we do and what the world's doing. So don't never kid yourself that you're on that it's your brand will be complete when or your brand will be perfect
mm,
when
mm,
because
mm,
as long as you keep doing the work and putting it out there, it's going to change and evolve
mm.
over time and as you change and evolve.
So what are we saying? How are we phrasing this? Done is better than perfect. Just get started.
I've
Just do
got
it.
it. I've worded it as no such thing as complete.
No such thing as complete. Okay, I get
So,
that.
so if we recap our nine, nugget number one is what would the village say about you? Nugget
Yeah.
number two was humility and be humble. Nugget number three was do the work.
Yes.
Nugget number four was know why you want to build a personal brand. Number five was know your channel because that's where your audience hang out. Number six, embrace the imposter syndrome. I love that one.
Yeah.
Number seven is celebrate you and your weirdness. Number eight is know your fears. Again, I think that's really powerful. And number nine is no such thing as completed. I think this is a really good one, and I'm glad we had the chance to talk about this. Do you want to maybe talk about the topic for the next one? Because I know when we chatted on WhatsApp yesterday, we're gonna do a bit of a mental health focus for our next one.
Yes. So we talked about depression,
Yes.
depression in business, and it. Yeah, I suppose the header of it or the title of it is with regard to mental health
Yeah.
and wellness. For me, over time, and it's take only over time that I can say this, I've actually come to feel like depression is a normal part of life,
Yeah.
and it's connected to mental health, physical health, and spiritual health. So it's a
Absolutely right.
encompassing thing. But yeah, the next conversation, depression
Yeah.
in business, we may need to give it some kind of rebrand so it doesn't sound
Yeah. We
sound
will.
depressing and sad and all these other
we
things.
will.
But
We will.
it's
We
a
will.
really important topic.
Yeah.
And Hang
We'll
on,
come up.
I'm
We'll
not sure
come
what's
up.
happened.
We'll come up with a fun name for it. Don't worry about that. Sorry, my connection went unstable for a minute.
Your connection seems to have gone.
Are you back? Are we back?
Your connection seems. Hang on a sec. I think you have now caught up with yourself.
Right. Well,
Just about. Oh no, hang on.
I think basically we're experiencing here the realities of doing podcasts via Zoom in essence, but it's fine. We're keeping it real. That's not being edited out. That's staying in.
Right, we're
Right.
keeping the robot big.
So I hope you have a lovely day. Um,
Like
again,
my brother.
again, keeping it real. I'm going to go and find some lunch. And the other thing is, I've got a plant on my desk now which needs watering. So I'm going to water my plant,
Yeah.
find some lunch, and then I'm going to start to transcribe and edit our conversations. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And I will speak to you later on.
Love my bro.